Well, hey everyone, I'm James, and to all of you at all our locations, we're trusting God is speaking to you and that this series is so helpful to you. This series is called Matters of the Heart, and we're looking at a subject that's part of our everyday lives, and that's our finances. And you know, God has so much to say in His Word about our finances. Last week, Chris spoke about having the right perspective, that God is with us in the journey of managing our finances, that God owns everything, and we're blessed to be a blessing. And today we're going to look at the heart, and we're going to look at taking steps to become more content. You know, it's so interesting that Jesus spoke so much about money and how it affects our hearts. And one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves is, how is my relationship with money affecting my heart? One of the powerful things that Jesus said about money and the heart is found in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. Jesus said, "No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money." And Jesus is warning us. He's saying it's just not possible to serve God and money. Your heart can't do both. And he's saying that money is competing for our hearts. You know, I remember when I was a kid and we would go bodyboarding at Big Bay. And we were really small, but we had a lot of heart. You know, we thought we were invincible. And I remember the one day paddling out and I got stuck in a riptide. And my little arms and legs were kicking and paddling, but it was doing nothing. And eventually I just got sucked out to this like sandbank. And the lifesavers had to come and get me. And my friends saw it and it was really embarrassing. But I'll never forget that unstoppable pull of the riptide. And that's what the love of money does. It's like a riptide that pulls our hearts away from God. And it makes us greedy people. And maybe you can relate to this, the ripple effect that money has on our hearts. It just sucks you in, you know, the way it calls to us, like money speaks to us. It tells us if we have more, life will be easier. People will think better of me. I'll be happier. You know, money talks to us. And we also find that money wants to rule. It wants to be in charge of our hearts. You know, we end up trusting what we own more than we trust God. And then money makes promises. It makes promises it can't keep. You know, promises that we'll be fulfilled and that we'll be safe. And don't you find that money also encourages us to compare ourselves with others? And as soon as we start comparing ourselves to others, we stop being grateful for what we have, and we're just trying to keep up with the Joneses. But let's face it, most of us do struggle because it's so normal in our world today to love money. You know, it's like the story of the frog in the pot. He doesn't even notice that the water is starting to boil until it's too late. It just happens so gradually, and we don't even notice how dangerous it's getting. We need someone who's not in the pot to warn us and help us. Fortunately, we serve a God who's not in the pot, and He's able to help us. And God has made a way for us to get out of the pot, to get out of greed. Our God invites us to move towards contentment. And this is part of our spiritual growth. Contentment is the opposite of always striving to get more. It's resting peacefully in our current circumstances, no matter what they are. It's being satisfied in our relationship with God and what He's blessed us with. You know, one of the greatest Christians who ever lived was the Apostle Paul. And Paul was often in prison for preaching about Jesus. But during one of his sentences, the church in Philippi, they really had it on their heart to take Paul a gift. And so they put some stuff together and they sent someone to take him a gift in prison. And we see in Philippians 4 where Paul says that he's grateful to God that they care about him so much. And then he says in Philippians 4, verse 11, "I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through Him who gives me strength." And so Paul is saying that he's grateful for the gift. But he's saying, I want you to know that I'm content. I'm fulfilled, not because of the stuff you brought, but because I have Jesus, something so much more valuable. And Paul's joy did not depend on his circumstances. Paul knew how to be joyfully rich and joyfully poor. Paul's secret was Jesus. And guys, we can learn the same secret. Right now, whether we have a lot or a little, whatever situation we find ourselves in, we can be content. And this contentment comes from having our eyes fixed on Him and having His perspective on money. You know, when we follow Jesus' ways and teachings, it leads us away from the trap of greed, where we feel like we always want more, where we feel like we don't have enough and we're not blessed. And it takes us to a place of peace, of realizing I am blessed. And I know that we have some very real needs. But guys, we can rest in the knowledge that God is with us, that we're blessed. And in that place, we can be grateful and we can put our trust in Him. The good news is we can actually lead our hearts from a place of greed to a place of contentment. So how do we do this practically? Well, we need to have a plan. You know, if we don't have a plan, we'll just wake up one morning and think, where did all my money go? And if you're married, I would encourage you to work on your plan, work on your budget together. Jess and I do this. Sometimes it gets a little bit emotional, but it's always worth it. We put it all on the table. There's no secrets. And we work on our plan together. And as you plan, build in margin. Margin is God's idea. It's a method God used to teach His people to be content and to be generous. In Leviticus, we see that God told the Israelite farmers that when they harvest their fields, they mustn't harvest all the way to the edge. They must leave some for the poor and the foreigners. So back then, their harvest was their money. And God was saying, don't use all of your money, but be content and leave some for others. And today we can practice this as well. Don't spend every last every last rand. Plan to have some extra money left over at the end of the month. And then you will be able to save and give. And this is especially helpful when you're living maxed out every month. I know it can seem daunting, but remember, we have Jesus' help. And this helps us to become financially healthy and to be more faithful to God. And it will help us find joy and peace. So church, I want to leave you with two questions. Firstly, how is your relationship with money affecting your heart? And then secondly, are you living in a place of contentment? Well, God bless you guys, and I hope you enjoy your discussions.